Hi, everyone. So for today's distance learning lesson, we are going to put inequalities in context. This will allow us to also practice solving inequalities as well. Now, before we get to an inequality, your due now is to take at most 10 minutes to solve the following word problem that results in an equation. So this is what was on the previous unit summative, and is also an example of a problem that you would have created for your project. So take at most 10 minutes, remember the instructions, give it a shot. So here's the answer to the first question. Notice that I used a diagram to help me write my equation. Now, X was defined as every 20 minutes, but we were given 3 hours. Well, that's 9 20 minutes because 20 minutes, 40 minutes, 60 minutes, that's 1 hour. So if I have 3 hours, that's 9. So that's how I was able to get 9x for my equation. Hopefully you didn't forget to write your sentence as well. So as I said, our objective for today is to take what we've done with equations and apply them to inequalities and compare them. What words might suggest an inequality instead of an equation? So let's go on to our first problem. So I have 2 examples that I'm going to do. And then we're going to have 4 practice problems. Completing this is your classwork and homework assignment. So the only difference is part E, where you now have to graph because we're dealing with inequalities. But we can still use the tape diagram to help us, but it doesn't equal. It's going to be less than, greater than, less than or equal, greater than or equal. So let's look at what's going on. Marco has a 30 euro online gift voucher. He plans to buy as many books as he can. It costs 4 euros each. I hope you're thinking multiplication. There's also a single shipping cost of 2 euros. How many books can he afford without spending more than his gift card? That's the important part. It's no longer saying to spend the gift card. It's saying I won't spend more. That means I have to be under or equal to 30. So here's my diagram. Well, it's $2 for shipping. I'm going to define B as number of books. Well, okay, $4 per book, so 4B. Now, I'm not going to say that this is going to equal. I'm not going to go like this and say equal 30, because that's not the case. I want this to be no more. That's less than or equal to 30. So my inequality is 2 plus 4B is less than or equal to 30. This is where I now get to practice solving inequalities. Subtract 2 from both sides. 4B is less than or equal to 28. Divide both sides by 4 and get B is less than or equal to 7. Now I go and I write myself a sentence. Marco can buy at most 7 books. Notice I say at most, because I'm not going to say he will buy 7. He might not. He might buy 6. Now I go and graph it. Now graphing a word problem is a little different because you have to take the context. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And here is the context. Now, B is less than or equal to 7. Okay, So that means I need a closed circle at 7. Well, less than means I'm going to the left. And normally we would just draw an arrow. But here's the thing. I have to stop at 0. I can't have negative books. So I stop my graph. I have to take that into account. So if you don't have this in your notes, take a moment to pause this video and put this example into your notes before going on to the next one. If you have questions, come into the Google meeting so we can talk. Let's go on to example 2 now. So here's example 2. On top of the push-ups that I was doing earlier, because I'm getting a little antsy just sitting in my apartment all day, I also had the goal of obtaining at least 10,000 steps a day, even if I'm just walking in a circle. But that at least is what's now telling me it's an inequality. Well, this is one of those tricky ones. At least means I want to be greater than or equal, larger. So I've already completed 3,000, and I plan on spreading the rest out over the next 6 hours. So let's go with S, steps per hour. I'm going to draw a diagram again to show what I already have. So I already have the 3,000. And then I have the steps per hour. Well, there's 6 hours, so 6S. And this I now need to be greater than or equal to 10,000, to have at least 10,000. So we can write the equation, 3,000 plus 6S is greater than or equal to 10,000. Subtract 3,000 from both sides. Get 6S is greater than or equal to 7,000. And then I'm going to divide both sides by 6. Divide both sides by 6. And this is where, you know what? I cannot do that in my head. So I'm getting my calculator out. And I get that S is greater than or equal to 1,166 2/3. Now, I have to take this into account. S represents steps. I can't take 2/3 of a step. So when I write my sentence, I would say, Mr. Kaufman must walk at least. Well, if I need to be greater than this number, 1,167 steps an hour to reach his goal. So rounding with inequality problems are different. You don't just round to the closer one. You have to round based on the situation. I must be greater than this number, which means I will never round down. I must round up. Let's go to my graph now. Remember, I require 0. Again, remember, you're not putting this number up, you're putting this number. So 1,167. I have to have a closed circle again because it's greater than or equal, which is going this way, because those are the values that I can do. I can do more than that. So again, if you don't have this yet, pause it and get this example into your notebook, because you're going to be uploading a photo of this at the end. If you have that, we'll move on to the practice. So there are 4 practice problems. You should be taking about 10 minutes max per question. If you can't get it in 10 minutes, write unsure, I will go over it, and then you will try the next practice problem. There's 4. So here's the first one. Take your 10 minutes. So here is the answer to practice number 1. I've defined K as the number of kilometers driven. So I used 3K plus 2.5 is less than or equal to 20 as my inequality. I got this because I saw 3 per kilometer. So that tells me multiply the kilometers by 3. Only have a budget means less than or equal to that because we could spend up to our budget. I got this answer 5.83. Well, I don't have to round for kilometers because we can have a 0.83 kilometer. Again, notice that my graph, I stopped at 0 because I can't have less than 0 kilometers. So here's now a third one for you to have seen. Hopefully, each one is going to take you less time as you become more familiar with it. Pay close attention because I will start throwing in some values that result in negative numbers again. So think about how that takes into account solving the inequality. Let's go on to practice 2. So here is practice 2. So again, you should be taking about 10 minutes maximum for this before plugging in your answer and seeing how you do. Best of luck. So here's the answer key for practice 2. Again, we saw that word at least and think greater than or equal. A day, thinking multiplication. That resulted in this inequality. Now, notice that this was our answer based on the inequality. But D represents days, and he gets paid 80 euros a day. So working 13 days is not enough because 13 is not greater than or equal to 13.125. So that's why I said Bert must work at least 14 days to have enough money for his holiday. You have to take that context into account. All right, again, if we're still having difficulties, make sure we come into Google Meeting or send me an email. Let's go on to practice 3. All right. Take it away. So here's the answer key to practice number 3. I saw at most 200, which means I'm less than or equal to 200. I drew this diagram showing that I had 3 large tables of 10. So 10 students, 10 students, 10 students. That's where I got the 30. I then saw that I had an unknown number of smaller tables. So that's why I defined T as number of smaller tables. Well, there are 4 kids per table. It doesn't say that, but we have to take some of the assumption. So 4 kids per table, well, that per means multiply. So that's why 4T. So that's why I put that in there. Now again, notice that when I solved it, I got the answer 42.5. But then I wrote that there can be at most 42 4C tables. This answer specifically says T is less than or equal. I can't be equal to 42.5 tables. I can't have 0.5 tables. And since it says less than, I go to the first number, 42, and that's my at most. Again, notice the graph. I don't go below 0 because I can't have negative tables. So here is practice number 4. Again, take about 10 minutes. Keep in mind some of those negative situations with inequalities. So I'm going to record as I solve this one. So I begin at an elevation of 20. So that's why I have this 20 right here. I descend at a rate of 2 meters per minute. So m, number of minutes hiking, descent, that's go down, so that's negative, and that's why I have that there. At least 37 below sea level. Well, this is confusing. Usually we think at least, and we want greater than or equal, but draw a diagram. Here we go. Here's my mountain. Here's my mountain. We'll below that this is sea level. So right here is negative 37. I want to be down here. Being at least a negative number actually makes us do the opposite inequality. So it's less than or equal to negative 37. Now let's go and solve it. Minus 20 minus 20. Negative 2m, because that cancels out, is less than or equal to negative 57. Divide by a negative 2. We just divided by a negative, so that inequality sign is going to flip. We're going to get m, and that's going to be a half of 50 is 25, half of 7 is 3.5, so 28.5. We can have 0.5 of a minute, so therefore, the club must hike for at least 28.5 minutes. We'll go and graph this. I'm going to go by 6, 12, 18, 24, 30. Use a different color to say that this right here is 28.5. Another closed circle, greater than or equal. So those are our 4 practice problems for today. Next class, we will do a blend of equations and inequalities. So you're going to get further practice on this. So if you're not sure, make sure you ask for help.